I didn't realize someone was watching me until the TV turned off by itself, and I heard breathing that wasn't mine. That moment still replays in my head the same way, over and over like a broken tape I can't eject. 1 second I was sprawled on the carpet, controller warm in my hands, the soft glow of the television filling the living room. The next the screen went black. Not flickered. Not glitched. Just off. And in that sudden silence I noticed it, the sound I hadn't heard before. Slow. Careful. Too close. Breathing. At first my brain refused to understand what was wrong. I was home alone. I was always home alone after school. My parents worked late. That was normal. The house was familiar, safe, boring even. Nothing bad was supposed to happen here. And yet my chest tightened as if some part of me already knew something I didn't want to accept. I remember thinking, did the power go out? But the lamp in the corner was still on. The microwave clock still glowed green. The house hadn't lost power. Only the TV had shut off. As if someone had pressed the button on purpose. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The sound came again, soft, uneven, right behind me. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, but fear glued my eyes to the dark screen in front of me. I could see my own reflection now, faint and distorted. A small kid with wide eyes frozen in place. For a split second I thought I saw something else reflected there too, something taller, darker. But I told myself it was just my imagination. Kids imagine things. That's what adults always say. Still my hand started shaking. I tried to laugh it off in my head. You're being stupid, I told myself. It's probably the house settling. Probably the vents. But the breathing didn't sound like pipes or air. It sounded patient. Like whoever or whatever was making it knew I was listening. I finally found the courage to whisper, "Mom." My voice cracked so badly it barely sounded like a word. The house didn't answer. The breathing stopped. That was somehow worse. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. I felt exposed, like prey that had just been noticed. I told myself to get up, to run to my room, to grab the phone. But my legs wouldn't work. I was too afraid that if I moved, whoever was there, had someone come in? Had they been watching me the whole time? How long had they been there? I felt stupid for not noticing sooner, for being distracted by a game while something was wrong in my own house. I was about to scream when I heard it again. A slow step. Not outside. Not upstairs. Inside the house. Behind me. That was the moment I understood one terrifying truth. Whatever was watching me wasn't trying to scare me. It was waiting. And I was too young to understand why. Before any of that happened, before the TV went dark, before the breathing, before the fear, I was just a normal kid having a normal afternoon. I was 9 years old, in the 3rd grade, and the biggest problem in my life back then was whether I'd finish my homework before my favorite show came on. It was a weekday in early fall, the kind where the sun still hangs around longer, stretching the afternoon into something warm and lazy. School had let out at 3, and by 4 o'clock I was already home, backpack dumped by the door like always. Our house wasn't big or old or creepy. It was a simple 2-story place in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where every house looked almost the same. Neatly trimmed lawns, white mailboxes, driveways with chalk drawings that faded and reappeared every week. Nothing about it felt scary. It was just home. My parents both worked late shifts, so being home alone for a few hours wasn't unusual. They trusted me. I had rules. Don't answer the door, don't use the stove, call if anything feels wrong. But I felt grown up just being there by myself. Most days I actually liked the quiet. No yelling, no chores, no bedtime reminders. Just me in the house. That afternoon, I remember feeling relaxed, comfortable, safe. I kicked off my shoes, grabbed a juice box from the fridge, and turned on the TV like I always did. The living room was my favorite spot in the house. The couch faced the window, sunlight spilling in and lighting up the dust floating in the air. The carpet smelled faintly like laundry detergent, and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen was a sound I barely noticed anymore. I sat on the floor back against the couch, controller in hand. I wasn't thinking about anything serious. Just levels. Scores. Beating my last record. My mind was completely ordinary. No fear, no worry, no sense that anything was off. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of kids playing somewhere down the street. A dog barked once and went quiet. A car passed by. All of it felt normal, reassuring even. This was my world. Predictable. Boring in the best way. Every so often, I'd glance at the clock on the microwave to keep track of time. My mom usually got home around 6. Dad closer to 7. I figured I had at least 2 hours all to myself. Plenty of time to relax before homework and dinner. I remember thinking how nice it felt to be alone but not lonely. The house felt like it was holding me, like nothing bad could touch me inside those walls. I trusted it the way only a kid can, completely and without question. At one point, I paused the game to grab a snack and wandered into the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the window above the sink. Everything looked exactly the way it always did. Chairs pushed in. Countertops clean. Nothing out of place. I didn't hear anything strange. I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel afraid. I went back to the living room, sat down and unpaused the game. If someone had told me then that my house wasn't empty, that something had already changed, I would have laughed. I would have rolled my eyes and gone back to playing. Because in that moment the world still made sense. And that's what scares me the most now. Not the fear that came later, but how safe everything felt right before it all went wrong. It started with a sound I almost ignored. At first it was so small that my brain tried to explain it away before I even noticed it. A faint thump from somewhere upstairs. Not loud. More like the sound of someone setting something down too hard. I froze for a second, controller still in my hands, then relaxed. Houses make noise. I'd heard that 1,000 times. Pipes shift. Floors creak. Wood expands and contracts. That's what adults always said. I turned the volume up on the TV and kept playing. A few minutes passed. Nothing else happened. The sunlight in the living room seemed a little dimmer. But that made sense too. The sun was lowering, stretching shadows longer across the floor. Still normal. Still safe. Then I heard it again. This time it wasn't a thump. It was more like a soft scrape, almost careful, coming from the hallway that led to the stairs. The kind of sound you'd hear if someone brushed their shoe lightly against the wall. My character on the screen froze because my hands had stopped moving. I leaned forward, listening. Nothing. The house settled back into silence, thick and heavy in a way I hadn't noticed before. The refrigerator's hum felt louder. The ticking clock in the kitchen suddenly stood out, each second stretching just a little too long. I told myself I was being stupid. I was 9 years old. Alone. My imagination was bored and looking for something to do. That's all. But when I glanced toward the hallway, it felt darker than it should have. The lights were off like always, but the shadows seemed deeper, pooling at the base of the stairs. I couldn't see the top landing from where I sat. The staircase just disappeared into blackness. I remember feeling a small, uncomfortable twist in my stomach. Not fear exactly, just unease. I turned back to the TV, but I wasn't really watching anymore. Another sound came, this one closer. A soft creak like a step being tested. Slow. Controlled. The kind of creak you hear when someone is trying not to make noise. My chest tightened. I held my breath without realizing it. Dad. I called out, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. No answer. I waited, counting the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. My heart started to beat faster, each thump loud in my ears. I listened hard, straining for anything, footsteps, a voice, even laughter proving I was wrong. Instead, I felt something else. That feeling you get when someone is standing behind you. The air in the room felt different, like it had thickened. My skin prickled, especially at the back of my neck. I hadn't heard anything move, but I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone anymore. That the house, which had felt so familiar just minutes before, was now watching me. I slowly turned my head, scanning the living room. Everything looked the same. Couch, window, door locked tight. No signs of anyone else. And yet the feeling didn't go away. Another small sound, this time from above me. A gentle tap followed by a pause, then another. Almost rhythmic. Like fingers testing the floor. I stood up, my legs stiff, and muted the TV. The sudden silence made my ears ring. Without the background noise, the house felt huge. Hollow. I took a step toward the hallway, then stopped. Something about the way the shadows shifted made my stomach drop. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it felt wrong, like the darkness upstairs had moved closer without making a sound. I didn't know what was happening. I only knew that the house no longer felt empty. And whatever had changed hadn't announced itself yet. The sound came again, but this time there was no mistaking it. A slow, deliberate creak rolled down the staircase. Mom! I tried again, louder this time. The word barely left my mouth before the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It pressed down on me, thick and suffocating, like the air itself had grown heavy. Even the refrigerator had gone quiet. The ticking clock I'd noticed earlier seemed to vanish, as if time had decided to hold its breath. Then I heard it. Breathing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, steady, and far too close, coming from the top of the stairs. I took a step back without thinking, my heel bumping into the coffee table. The small clack echoed through the living room like a gunshot. The breathing stopped. I stared at the dark hallway, my eyes burning, refusing to blink. That's when I saw it. A shape shifted at the top of the stairs. At first, it was just a darker patch of darkness, barely distinguishable from the shadows behind it. Then it leaned forward, just enough for light from the living room to catch the edge of something that shouldn't have been there. A face. Not clear. Not fully visible. Just the outline, too tall, too still, with eyes that reflected light in a way eyes shouldn't. They weren't blinking. They weren't searching. They were already locked on me. The moment stretched thin like glass about to crack. And then it smiled. Not wide. Not exaggerated. Just enough to tell me it knew I could see it. That was the second everything changed. The house no longer felt like shelter. Felt like a trap. The air grew cold, brushing against my arms like unseen fingers. My chest tightened so much it hurt to breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move. I was rooted to the spot, staring up at something that wasn't supposed to exist in my home. The figure took one step forward. The floorboard groaned under its weight, loud and deliberate, like it wanted me to hear it. Like it wanted me to know this was real. I backed away, my foot catching on the rug, nearly sending me to the floor. Panic flooded in all at once, hot and dizzying. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone was inside the house. And they knew I was alone. I turned and ran toward the kitchen, my breath coming out in short, sharp gasps. Behind me I heard movement, faster now. No longer careful. No longer hiding. The sound of feet hitting the stairs. Coming down. The walls felt closer as I sprinted, my vision blurring at the edges. I didn't know what I was running from exactly, only that if it reached me, something irreversible would happen. I reached the kitchen doorway and glanced back without meaning to. The figure was at the bottom of the stairs now, fully visible, standing where the light should have revealed a normal person, but instead showing something wrong. Its proportions were off. Its head tilted at an angle that made my stomach churn. And those eyes, they were smiling even though its mouth wasn't. That was when the last bit of denial shattered. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was in danger. And whatever was in my house wasn't playing games. I ran. Not thinking. Not planning. Just pure, animal panic taking over as my feet slammed against the kitchen tile. I heard it move behind me. Fast now, careless, the sound of bare feet slapping wood far too close. My lungs burned. My vision tunneled. Every breath came out as a sharp, painful gasp. I aimed for the back door. My hand hit the handle and yanked. Locked. Of course it was locked. I spun around just as something crashed into the kitchen doorway, the force rattling the cabinets. A shadow filled the frame where a person should have been, stretching too tall, blocking the light. I screamed, a thin, broken sound, and bolted past the table, nearly slipping on the rug. Please, I didn't know who I was begging. The hallway felt endless now, longer than it had ever been. The sound behind me changed, closer, heavier, like it was smiling as it chased me. I cut left and dove into the bathroom, slamming the door with everything I had. The lock clicked into place a half second before something slammed into the other side. The door bowed inward. I scrambled backward, slipping in socks, my back hitting the tub. Another hit. Louder. The mirror rattled. The light flickered once, then steadied, casting harsh white across the small room. I could hear it breathing again, right on the other side of the door. Slow. Patient. Like it knew time was on its side. My eyes darted around, desperate. No window big enough. No second exit. Just me and a door that wouldn't hold forever. The handle twisted. Once. Twice. I clamped my hands over my mouth to stop myself from making a sound. Tears blurred my vision. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might give me away. The door shuttered again, then suddenly, everything went quiet. Too quiet. I waited. Counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then the footsteps moved away. I didn't trust it. I stayed frozen, muscles screaming until my legs went numb. When I finally stood, it was slow, careful. I leaned toward the door, pressing my ear against it. Nothing. I cracked the door open an inch. The hallway was empty. I took a step out, and that's when it dropped from the ceiling. It hit the floor in front of me with a wet, heavy sound, unfolding itself too quickly, limbs bending the wrong way. I screamed and stumbled back, slipping, barely catching myself on the sink. It lunged. I ducked and ran. Down the hall, past the living room, past the couch where I'd been playing not 20 minutes earlier. The TV was still on, characters frozen mid-motion like they were watching me flee. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. The front door. My hand shook so badly I dropped my keys the first time. They clattered across the floor, impossibly loud. I dove for them as something slammed into the wall behind me, close enough that I felt the rush of air. I grabbed the keys, jammed one into the lock, twisted, the door flew open. I spilled out onto the porch, falling hard, skin scraping against concrete. I scrambled to my feet and ran barefoot into the street, screaming for help, not caring who heard me. Behind me at the doorway it stopped. Didn't follow. Just watched. I kept running until a neighbor grabbed me, until lights came on, until voices filled the air and the world snapped back into place. I survived. But only because it let me. The police said I was safe. They wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and sat me on the neighbor's couch while flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. An officer knelt in front of me, speaking slowly, gently, the way adults talk to children when they're trying not to scare them. "You're okay now," he said. "No one's hurt you. We've checked the house." I nodded, even though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They walked me back inside later after my parents were called, after more officers arrived. The house looked normal. Too normal. The same hallway. The same couch. The same kitchen table with my homework still spread out like I just stepped away for a second. No broken doors. No damaged ceiling. No signs of a struggle. They checked every room. Closets. Attic. Basement. Under beds. Behind shower curtains. The officer who climbed into the attic came back down, shaking his head. "Nothing up there," he said. "Just insulation and dust." I tried to explain. I told them about the footsteps, the breathing, the way it watched me, the way it dropped from the ceiling like it had been waiting. They listened, but I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. One of them crouched down and asked, "Were you watching something scary? A movie maybe?" I shook my head so hard it hurt. "It was real," I whispered. "It was in the house." They wrote things down anyway. Stress response. Imagination. Child alone too long. When my parents finally arrived, my mom cried and held me so tight I could barely breathe. My dad thanked the officers over and over, his voice shaking in a way I'd never heard before. They took me home that night, even though I begged not to go back inside. I slept between my parents. I didn't sleep at all. For weeks after that, things felt off. Doors would be unlocked in the morning that we swore were locked at night. Lights would be on in rooms no one remembered entering. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear a faint sound above my bedroom ceiling. A slow, careful shift, like something repositioning its weight. My parents said it was the house settling. I stopped telling them what I heard. Months passed. Then years. Eventually, life moved on the way it always does. I grew up. We moved to a different house. I convinced myself it had been fear, loneliness, a kid's imagination pushed too far. Almost convinced. Until the night I came back. I was in my 20s, driving through my old neighborhood out of pure nostalgia. I didn't plan to stop, but my hands turned the wheel on their own. The house still stood there, paint faded, porch light off, looking smaller than I remembered. Empty. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the yard. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at it, my chest tight. I don't know why I got out. I don't know why I walked up to the porch. I just know that standing there felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The front door was locked. But as I turned away, something caught my eye. Inside the living room window, pressed faintly against the glass, were two handprints. Too high to belong to a child. Too narrow to belong to an adult. They were on the inside. I stepped back, heart pounding, telling myself it was old residue, a trick of the light. Anything that didn't end with the truth crawling back into my head. Then the porch light flicked on. I didn't hear a switch. I didn't see movement. Just light. I ran. I didn't look back then either. But sometimes late at night when my own house is quiet and the world feels thin, I hear a soft sound above my ceiling. A slow shift. A patient breath. And I wonder if it ever really stayed behind, or if it simply learned how to wait.